All right, this is going to be my first attempt doing one of these types of videos here, installing the Barricade inner and outer fenders, the outer ones with the red piece in the middle there. I initially ordered just the exterior fender without the inside, and then once I put the rears on, I realized it really did need a fender on the inside. It looked a little bit naked down there, so I ordered the fender liners. I'll talk a little bit more about the rears at the end. I've already installed those, so I'm not going to do a video on that, but I will tell you a little bit about what I learned. I did install the front right to make sure I had this figured out and learned a few things, and so now I'm going to show you how to do the front left fender. See my workspace here. I find it helps to lift the Jeep up just a little bit, especially in the rears. It helped to get access to the back end of that fender. You see this thing's already on. Got the right fender installed. Looks really good with the Barricade inner liners. It's just that I found that the instructions left a little bit to be desired. So talk you through it a little bit, starting with the removal of the factory OEM fender. So the Barricade instructions tell you to start by removing the fender by punching through all these rivets. Start with these two down here, and then there's a couple other screws and points to pull out. There's the other one. There's one back here. There's also one screw on top. I'll show you where that is. I didn't find it necessary to separate the inner and the outer. If you disconnect the inside, the rest of them will kind of snap off. So I'll show you the key ones to start with. Definitely the screws. I showed you the one here. There's one up here and one over here. So we'll pop those out first. To remove these clips, I really like this little removal tool, one of the few specialty tools I do like to keep around. I'll pop that sucker off. All right, now I'm going to start with the clips that keep the body attached to the fender. Try to do this from underneath, keep from marking up any of the paint. There we go. And once you busted that guy off, it's a little easier to kind of get him going here. And the only thing you want to be careful of is the electrical connection. There's just one up top there, right in the middle. There's enough slack, you're not going to tear it, but all right, now you notice under here, you just pull back the inner fender a little bit. So you've popped everything. There are two screws underneath holding up the outer fender, right here and one up here. So we're gonna pop those suckers off, and that is your 10 millimeter. All right, with those two underneath, you can pop the last few. Second, I can do this with one hand. All right, pop those few clips off. You see it's down the last one, and you can see I got my electric down there. So I'm going to take a little bit of care. Just pop this last one up. Just like on the inside, if you're doing the doors, push that red clip out. Give me a sec. Yep. There we go. Pop that out. And then the clip underneath. Getting a little tricky with one hand here. Yeah, so here's what the bottom of that looks like. We pop the red thing, and then you just push the little clip that sits right in front of that in. Again, hard to see from underneath and hard to manage with just one hand, but it comes off pretty easily. And then you see, I'll pop this outside here for a second. Did not have to separate the inner from the outer fender. It all sits together. If you want to resell that, get a little money back for paying for your Barricade parts. All right, back inside, I'll show you a little bit about the packaging here. As you can see, they come well packaged, a lot of styrofoam. Comes a little bag of the parts you need. Here's the other fender, I haven't popped out yet. Came in good shape. The issue with the inner fenders is it tells you to install the left one and the right one. What it doesn't label and make it easy for you is letting you know which one this is. Just from the looks of it, would have no idea whether this was the left or the right. I had to stick the other one up against it and try to match up the holes to figure out what was what. For the outside, it's fairly easy. They do kind of show you the picture of which one's which. But for the inner fenders here, you can see there's no way really to tell, and the pictures are not very clear about that. So this pictured here is the driver's side. So we're gonna install that. What I did find with the rears was that, as I mentioned earlier, I bought and installed the outers first. And then the inners, and that was fine. Installing the inners after the outers was absolutely no problem at all. With the fronts, it kind of makes sense to install them both at the same time, and I think you'll see why as we go through that. There are a couple shared holes that they use to install the two different pieces. The first thing we're going to install here is the what they're calling the lower body bracket. This is the only piece that looks like this in the bag, obviously one for each side. It's going to go in this hole here. You'll see there's a little piece of plastic that didn't quite come fully out, so we're going to try to pop that out real quick here to clear that up for our new piece. We're going to get that little sucker just pop. They should generally just fall through. But this one's being a little stubborn. There we go. All right, we'll get that guy later. So this bracket will just kind of slide up here. You want this long piece on the inside. That's where your threads are. You just kind of work it in there. It's a kind of a spring thing going on to almost paper clip it on. Kind of easy to use this as a lever to kind of push it on for me and line it up so that the holes go through, and then we're going to use that to attach this piece here. And we're not going to worry too much about the exact angle at the moment. This will be used to adjust. You can tighten that a little bit, but make sure you have a little bit of play. So it's going to be like kind of somewhat this angle. We'll find out when we put the sheet on and exactly what that angle needs to be before tightening that up, making sure it stays in place. If you see here, not all the clips came off or completely broke when the body popped off. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish breaking these off. We're going to need these holes. If not, they'll at least be in the way. I'm going to try to do that. Being careful not to scratch up the outside body paint too much. You'll see that this is a thin sheet of metal. We'll be using several of these holes later to slide some washers up into and mount our brackets. And I think at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and just clean this up. You see a little bit of dirt and whatever, so this stuff doesn't get cleaned off near nicely enough being underneath, and we'll just go ahead and do that to reduce any dirt piling up. All right, so looking at holes where this is going to mount, down here, it's going to want to use, this is going to be one of the shared holes that both the inner and the outer fen use. That, and up here I'm pretty sure is the other one. So in the outer fender, if you're not installing the inner fender, this will have a nut that'll go on the inside. But since we'll have the inner fender, you'll see how that attaches. These two are the ones you're going to have to drill out to account for the threaded insert. And we'll show you how that works real quick. But I'm going to kind of get ahead. Like I said, I'm blending the two. As I see it makes sense to install both of them together. So let me take care of that right now, because that'll need some drying time. Looking at the two holes that you're going to have to drill out for the fronts. For the rears, you have to drill out about 8 of these. For The front it's only 2, but this is the insert that has to be go in here. As you can see, it doesn't quite fit. These things go in and then compress. You can see an example how they work if you have the inner liners, because they're pre-installed on the liner itself. This is the tool that they provide you to actually expand it. So once we drill out the holes, we're going to stick this in. We're going to use this tool to expand it. They make an expander tool. It looks like a big scissor. If you do a lot of these, not really worth it for me. I don't see this being more than a one-time job. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these out. Got my 25/64. I'm just going to run that through there. This is my less powerful drill, so that's why I give it a hard time. There we go. So nice and easy. And then what I'm going to do, clean some of that dust away and debris. Now what we did is we kind of ruined the factory paint on that little spot. Probably not a big deal, but what I am going to do is cover this up. I'm using a clear varnish lacquer spray paint meant for outdoor metal and wood and whatever. You can use a touch-up paint, something applied with a nail polish brush is probably easier and more accurate. So I'm going to keep this from going too far afield, but this way, if this ever does become visible, it's not really a big deal. And so that's what I mentioned before. I'm just going to knock this out so I can dry a little bit. But those are the only 2 holes where that's required. Now I'll move on. There are 4 of these brackets in the box, 2 long, 2 short. It's not very clear in the instructions as far as putting it together. On the passenger side, I use 2 short, and on the driver's side, they are 2 long. So these here are going to attach to the bottom of this. Very simple. You have access to the top of it. You're going to go ahead and put your nut up here and hold that as you slide that in. So 2-handed job again. I'll be right back. All right, so you can see I got 1, 2, 3 fasteners installed. My flare here. And so I'll figure out where those line up and make a small adjustment probably to that bottom one down there. But then on the right side here, you can see these are the fasteners installed. That's what they look like when you put them in the body edge. These are pre-installed here, but what these are going to do is they're going to go in behind. If I can do this with one hand. Yep, behind the body edge. And screw in like that. And if you're only doing the insert side fenders, you can just attach them like that. We'll fasten them temporarily, but then when we put the outer fenders on, we're going to reuse those same fasteners. All right, so you can see what it looks like position in here. I just got them threaded a little bit. I didn't have to adjust this bracket too much. It was right in the right spot. Got the 2 up here held on here. And then these 2. You notice I haven't tightened anything up yet. I'm just kind of keeping it generally in place for 2 reasons. One, well, these are going to come out when I put the outer bracket on, but then also I got the wiring to deal with. I want to make sure that I've got a little bit of flexibility, and I may even have to pop these out again to wire them safely. So now let's start looking at the outer fender. All right, so with these inserts, again, we're just going to use the tool that they gave us. Basically it screws in, and then you're going to use the tool to kind of basically attempt to pull it out, and this ribbed part will actually compress and kind of lock it in a place. So you just kind of put it in as far as it'll go, slide it in, use the 13 millimeter wrench to hold this to keep that lower end from moving. You can get that in there. And of course I'm using the wrong side of it. All right, and then again we got the 13 on the outside. Make sure this is set to on. All right, and so you just gotta wrench it in a couple turns, because that's what's gonna make that thing compress. If you do this often enough, I recommend that tool they mentioned. It's just it's a one-shot deal. So I had to move the camera out of the way to get the right angle on this. But once you got it all tightened up, you pivot your ratchet so you can start taking it off just to get the nut out. There we go. Once that's started, that should just untwist. Anything else, you're just fighting with your own wrench. So I don't like the way that scratched a little bit. I might cover that up with the varnish again. We got one more to go in this other hole, and then we'll be ready to set up our outer liner. All right, so I just got the outer fender resting up here on the brackets. There are the square brackets and bolts that'll hold it on. They tell you to initially install it, just thread those in so that you can identify the holes that you need to drill out, but we already knew that. Actually says it pretty clearly in the instructions. One of the things that they did get right, and so that part wasn't necessary. I do have is all the wires here. So I'm going to go ahead and connect those up. It's pretty straightforward. The yellow goes to its own yellow wire up there, and then there's a black to the black wire. This connects up here, and then this is the one that connects to the factory OEM. So we're gonna mess around with that a little bit. You want to make sure that it's not in a position where if there's anything get caught or any rubbing that you're gonna pull wires out easily. So I'm gonna mess around with that. What I did on the other side is I actually wired it up, and this is why it's good now to before I connect up these brackets, go ahead and run the wires up in here so they're kind of out of the way. And then we'll zip tie them, but I'll get them running behind there. This seems a little bit tighter than the other side, so I'm going to be careful not to run up. It looks like I got a nice little gap there. I may use and then up there, and then we'll see where we use zip ties. And then what I'm going to do, once that's all connected, I can go ahead and turn on the car and just test the lights, make sure there's no issues, because if I did have to put this back in the box and set it back, it'd be better now than after I attached everything. So we'll see how the electric works. All right, so we can see the lights are working. I got my yellow blinker on the right. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see that's white, as it will be when the blinker's not going. I really like that ability for the lights to go yellow or white, depending on what they're doing. Let me shut this beeping off before I'll show you what I did underneath. All right, so looking underneath, it's a bit of a mess. I'll clean that with the zip ties after. But with the clip, I actually ended up popping the clip holding the factory plug off because it came too close to this edge for me to safely run the wires back without fear of it cutting some of these wires while moving about. So that'll slide in there. This thing doesn't play too much inside. I think that'll be fine, and I'll just tighten up these wires and zip tie them. I'll do that at the end. So next I'm going to go ahead and set my bracket bolts here. You'll see they're just going to slide up. That's these guys right here. So you put the bolt up top, and they slide right up here on either side. So because they're big enough, you don't have to worry about holding the nut on top. And then these bolts will just go right in. I get a second hand free to hold that in position right. I'll go ahead and get that started. All right, so we're ready to start attaching this thing. Everything for the inner fender liner is still loosely on these three. I did take the two from the shared hole that we're going to use out, and we'll show you. I'm going to, because it's a shared hole, there's basically two different screws we can use. One from the inner fender liner kit and one from the outer fender liner. If you can see in my hand, they're two different sizes. So I'm going to use the longer one from the outer fender liner kit to try to make sure I get in there, because when I go and try to screw that in, it's going to be pushing back, and I need that little bit of length to try to grab those threads in there. So these two are going to be a little tricky, this one and the one up here, because I got to try to move this exactly in a position while lining up this on the outside. And again, this is not in position yet, so I'm going to try to get those first and then line the rest of it up. The other ones are going to be a little easier. They'll have their holes that they line up to up here. You see here where I'm just going to have to hold the nut in the back. You see my finger kind of like coming through, but that should be easy. And then there's one on the end that's similar. So and then finally these two will tighten up at the end. As we get close to that, we'll just make sure that everything's pushed up tight against the body edge as much as possible. All right, so I got everything started, about ready to tighten it up. Got the bolts on the inside here. Again, able to just kind of reach in and put those bolts on the other side, just kind of hold them in between the body edge here. Same with this one. This one was a little tricky. I tried to get my finger in through here to do that. This, of course, is in the inner body frame. This is one of the two inserts that we installed. This is the other one, and then this is going to the inner. So I'm going to tighten that up. So, of course, they give you the tool here. Personally, I like using a bit and a drill. Make sure it's tight. I use this goofy thing because I can get into some of the tighter places that the drill bit can't, and I can just tighten that up from where it is. So, yeah. So I'm going to finish that up. Lastly, we got the two bolts here. Again, I'm going to be pressing up against the car body, try to make sure that's nice and tight the whole way through. So that does it for the front. Everything looks good. I really like the way these turned out. They look awesome. Everything's tightened up. We checked the lights. Everything looks good. Looks like I still got to zip tie those wires, but love it. I did promise I'd talk a little bit about the backs. Like I said, I already installed them. A few things I wanted to point out. Number one, the instructions are very good about telling you which is left and right, and try to mess around with them, we'll figure it out. But if you lay out with the inside fenders, the square cutout is on the rear side. So when you see that, you know that you should be able to tell whether it's the left or right. There's something in the instructions about installing a center bracket on the insides, and there is nothing about a center bracket in here. So I don't know what that was about. It's a little confusing. There's a rear and there's a front, and it's pretty obvious which brackets you use. I was able to figure that out pretty quickly, but those all turn out correctly. The only other issue I had is when it came, the edge molded right around here was bumped out a little bit too much. It actually, if you can see, there's a little mark here where it was hitting this higher end of the body with the corner. So I actually had to shave that down with a grinder and make that so that this would fit tightly up against it. You see the rears have a rubber seam that wasn't with the front. I'm not sure why they chose not to do that on the front, but it does look fine, and that did wrap around pretty nicely. So overall, I like this. I like this mod. I like the way it looks. Debating whether or not to keep the red. I like the way the red looks, but I'm thinking about something different. So open any suggestions.